Breaking right now, Prince Harry's darkest day. After a brutal courtroom defeat by the Daily Mail, the Duke of Delusion has tried to put a smile on his face as he leaves Chatham House and new footage with a thumbs up. With a thumbs up to try and suggest that everything is okay, when we know it is far from okay, because this £50 million defeat shatters his reputation, proves that he lied in court, dragged a whole other major group of celebrities into his pathetic game, and achieved nothing apart from wasting tens of millions of pounds. But this verdict has actually meant that another scandal has flown slightly under the radar. So we're going to start with this. Nicole Lampert, ironically a top journalist for the Daily Mail, revealing, as if Prince Harry's visit home to the UK wasn't controversial enough, his first visit was to support photographer friend Miss Anne Harriman. Harriman recently announced he was standing down as chair of the Southbank Centre after controversy over alleged anti-Semitism and putting his politics front and centre. Harry was a star guest at the premiere of a hagiography about Harriman. And there is, sure enough, a whole load of pictures of Harry at this highly controversial film, Shoot the People. Now, Harriman is not a good guy, but the other issue for the royal family is that he is a guy on the hard left. And it proves why King Charles was absolutely right to lock Prince Harry out of Buckingham Palace for this visit. Because at the first night in Britain, when he was meant to be staying at Buckingham Palace, he attended the Southbank Centre to see this film with Harriman wearing an anti-apartheid t-shirt. More on that shortly. But just a little bit of background on Harriman, because it's very important. Last month, he announced that he would step down from his role after becoming embroiled in controversy over remarks he made online that were reported by The Telegraph. These included a claim that news outlets had omitted a Muslim victim from coverage of attacks in Golders Green. Harriman had also come under fire for reposting a claim that Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner, who are Jewish, were selling off the Albanian coastline to Jewish billionaires and an Israeli military project. In May, he was accused of comparing Reform UK's local election success with the Holocaust. Harriman's photography took off while covering the Black Lives Matter protests that erupted in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, and he has been friends with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex since, including photographing the couple for announcements during the COVID pandemic when they revealed to the world that they were expecting their daughter Lilibet. And Tom Sykes of The Royalist, who is not a big political guy, has revealed why it is terrible that this was the first image that Prince Harry decided to release to the world of him having arrived back home in this storm of controversy. Because he said that this t-shirt, right, for the anti-apartheid club is not an organization, it is a slogan of the pro-Palestinian solidarity movement and has become a staple of Palestinian-themed clothing brands, which, of course, have been marketed with taglines like "From South Africa to Palestine, we shall be free." And we know that that is a direct take on "From the River to the Sea." For Harriman, one of the most image-literate activists in Britain, to dress for the biggest photo call of the year in an anti-Israeli t-shirt is completely consistent with his brand. But for Harry, the author of a recent essay on the dangerous conflation of anti-Israel sentiment and anti-Jewish hatred, to stand beside him for pictures while he is wearing that is a special kind of stupid. Harriman took a black and white photograph of Harry and a pregnant Meghan announcing they were expecting Lily, and has functioned as a de facto official photography for the country ever since. But the optics of doing so publicly while he is wearing that t-shirt after all of the chaos in recent days is, to put it mildly, crazy. All of this information about Harriman is in the public domain, yet Harry still decided this should be the first public appearance of the week. And a reminder that in May, Harry published a piece in the New Statesman warning of a deeply troubling rise in anti-Semitism in Britain, arguing that British Jewish families were being made to feel unsafe in the country they call home, and cautioning that anguish over the devastation in Gaza and the wider Middle East was being dangerously conflated with prejudice against Jews. It read as complimentary to his father's own visible outreach to Jewish communities. So this guy, Prince Harry, right, is just a disaster. He's a total embarrassment. And this verdict, Neil and Christine Hamilton, I believe, should see him thrust out of the royal family officially. I think he should lose his title. I think his reputation has been shattered. I think after warning, he ended up perjuring himself in court. And Harry is just increasingly, Christine, becoming a huge embarrassment to King Charles, who I think was right to lock up Buckingham Palace and say, "You're not coming anywhere near it this time, sunshine." But I think he needs to say that that is going to be permanent, Christine, don't you?
Well, I mean, you've got to King Charles is a father who's, in inverted commas, lost his son and can't see his grandchildren, all that sort of thing. So you've got to feel sympathy for that. But I mean, honestly, Harry should have been stripped of God knows what ages ago. His behaviour has been absolutely appalling. He doesn't care. He clearly doesn't. He pretends to, but he doesn't care much for his father's feelings and the rest of his family. And William, of course, has taken a very firm stand on this. But I mean, that photo call, I didn't know about that, so I've just learnt it now from you. Unbelievably stupid. I mean, we all know that he's the dumbest member of the royal family, but I mean, how could... Surely he's got people advising him. Surely people could say, hang on a minute, you're in trouble anyway. You're probably about to lose this case against the Mail tomorrow. I mean, now today, but this was... For goodness sake, go to a wimpy bar or something. Don't go to that highly controversial and be photographed with that highly controversial man. He's lost his marbles. I mean, I love that phrase, bat, guano, crazy. I must remember that.
He has, hasn't he, Neil? He's just lost it. And unfortunately, Neil, and I do understand what Christine is saying, we of course have to remember that King Charles is a man with terminal cancer, and he's trying to forge some type of relationship with his 2 grandchildren, who at this point will have no recollection of ever having met their granddad, who is king. That is obviously deeply sad. But I'm sorry, Neil, sometimes royals have to make tough calls. And sometimes they have to put the institution and the country ahead of their own personal relationships. We saw it with the late Queen Elizabeth II. Do you remember when she stripped Andrew, Mountbatten Windsor, of all of his titles? And that was a devastating decision for her. He was her favourite son, believe it or not. He was. So I just feel Charles has to do the right thing now. And it can't. There can't be a next time. This court case is just so damaging, Neil. He lied in court. It just can't go on. He's got to be off the royal website. There has to be some type of ending now, because it feels like Harry just gets worse and more manipulative, Neil, and also critically more political. He is leaning into what I would describe as the nutty hard left in America, and that is dangerous. It's a dangerous path. Are you tired of being lied to by the media? Then subscribe to Outspoken. Real stories, real opinions, no censorship. It's totally free. Let's go.
No, I do feel very sorry for the king. Because Harry is the prodigal son, but he's returned far too early. In fact, he should never return, in my view, given his appalling behaviour towards his own family. And it's utterly disgraceful that he's denying his children the opportunity to get to know their grandfather. I think that in family terms, it is the most cruel way for Harry to behave. We know that his principal PR advisor, of course, is the Duchess of Darkness, with whom he lives, and she'll be ramping it up behind the scenes.
Oh, and what a great job she's doing, Neil.
Exactly. And he can't see a cowpat wanting to step in it, wanting to jump into it. This is the tragedy. He is an absolute ocean-going 10-watt bulb, isn't he? And he just doesn't have the common sense, let alone intelligence, to see where his best interests lie. And this serial litigation that he's entered into, I'm on his side to an extent. Nobody in their right mind supports phone hacking and things like that. And
no.
We've been the victims of it ourselves, and actually we've taken money from Rupert Murdoch as a consequence.
It was appalling. It was disgusting, but it wasn't being done against him at the Mail. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And he allowed David Sherborne, the slippery lawyer, to just convince him of a conspiracy that, remember, it's just important to point out, this was driven by criminals, criminal phone hackers and investigators and everything involved in Byline Times and hacked off, Max Mosley's money, Hugh Grant's campaigning. And he convinced himself via David Sherborne that all of this had happened to him. It had never happened. It was a fantasy. But before we come to that, I do just, you've raised the point of the children. And Christine, there's something really horrible that is going on with the children, because, Buckingham Palace now just accepts as fact that Prince Harry is emotionally trying to blackmail King Charles. But actually, this new report from the Daily Mail made me believe that there's also some weird sort of manipulation going on with Harry and Meghan and the children. And just hear me out, because you've got to listen to the friends that the Daily Mail is quoting to sort of really understand why what they're doing with the children, I think, is pretty twisted. So this is a source close to Prince Harry telling the Daily Mail, Harry is really, really keen to bring the kids. He wants to ground them in the UK in their heritage and their family heritage. They need to see their grandfather, and they need to understand more about where they come from. Their lack of knowledge of the UK is becoming apparent, along with their lack of connection to it. And absolutely, that's terrible. And that's something that Harry and Meghan have created. The problem is that the children are just so excited about this visit. So here's where it gets really twisted. They were told already some time ago that they are coming, and they are beside themselves with excitement. They have been hopping up and down about coming here. They are really excited about the trip. They've been talking about it for months. Harry and Meghan have been telling them about the UK. Harry doesn't want to disappoint them. There's nothing from him to say either way at the moment for sure, but the feeling I get is that he will find a way to make it happen for them, the children, in a way that everyone is happy with. He will try to be the bigger person and bring them anyway. Now, I'm sorry, Christine, you don't play those games. with young children.
No.
You don't tell them that you're bringing them to finally introduce them to these relatives who have been completely shut off from them as they live in some type of weird Montecito prison, and then take that away from them because you're unhappy about security, which you were never going to receive. So I put it to you, Christine, that I don't think Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are just playing emotional manipulation with King Charles. I actually think they're doing it with their own children, and I think that's particularly twisted. I honestly do.
Absolutely. If that is true, that the children were told some time ago that they're going to meet their grandfather, who happens to be king, and they'll have seen photographs of him, and they'll be really excited about that. If they were told all that, and then suddenly, because of Harry and Meghan's appalling manipulation of the situation, it's all about them, isn't it? But if they have brought their children into it in this way, I would have hoped that they hadn't told the children that they might be going to England until they knew definitely that they were going to. I mean, he is a thicko, but I think he's actually a thoroughly nasty person, frankly. I mean, the way he turned on the royal family in his book, whatever it was called, Spare Part or something.
It should have been called that.
Well, it's Spare, there we are, Spare. I knew I was half right. It is absolutely appalling. And I have to say, I think it's frightfully funny that he was shut out of Buckingham Palace. I mean, I know it's undergoing renovation, but I mean, how many bedrooms must they have there? He was told, no, you can't come. Well, we've all had to suddenly make up a bed for somebody who's arrived unexpectedly. So the idea
sometimes me at your house.
Well, there you go. The idea that wasn't possible, it was just so transparent. But
yeah.
I just think I think she in particular is a thoroughly nasty piece of work.
Well, they're trying to... Oh, sorry, Christine, finish it.
Well, it's finished.
Well, they're trying to sort of paint this picture now, though, of him being a great father. Harry, this is, because the source went on to tell the Daily Mail, everything Harry does now is as a father, not as a prince. He wants his children to know his own father. He wants them to spend a period with him and the family. That will mean a number of days in private. Yes, the visit is about Invictus, but for months now, it has also been about the children. They are the big motivating factor for the visit. And again, Christine, I just think, are you on something? Answer, yes. We know that he's on legal drugs, Christine. I point out legal drugs, legal psychedelics, legal marijuana, that type of thing. It's legal in California now. But you'd have to be, wouldn't you, to think that the royal family are going to allow in such toxicity and also such drama, Christine. I mean, let's just take a look, by the way, while we're discussing this, at Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and King Charles this week, who have just valiantly pressed on with their duties, the real work of the royal family. This was Catherine at the Evelina Children's Hospital. King Charles has been at the Tank Museum. And they are just so desperate to avoid the constant drama that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle bring into their lives.
All I can say is thank God, and I really mean that William is the older son, and he is going to be the king one day, and not this stupid footloose idiot. I know. Well, they are. I mean, Catherine, as far as I can see, has never put a foot wrong. I mean, just simply never. She just gets on with it. She's going to be a fantastic queen. How she to be a fly on the wall looking in on the conversations between Catherine and William. I mean, if I was Catherine, I would be absolutely livid. I'd be throwing things around and goodness knows what about your ghastly, evil brother. She's very composed in public, but I should think she's let rip in private. I hope she's let rip in private. Oh gosh, look at that woman, Meghan. Oh.
Breaking right now, Christine, we have just received Prince Harry's pushback at this verdict. I think the reason it's worth listening to, I mean, I've just had a very quick look at that moment. I'm going to read it at the same time with you, so we'll learn this together. But I think the fact that he just cannot admit that he got this wrong and that he genuinely believes that there is some deep, dark conspiracy against him shows you that the man has lost the plot. So this statement has been released, and this makes me super sad, by the way, with Doreen Lawrence, who Harry dragged into this case. Remember Doreen Lawrence, for people who don't know, her son, Stephen Lawrence, was brutally murdered in a racist attack. And actually, it was Paul Dacre in the Daily Mail who backed Doreen Lawrence, who helped get the Stephen Lawrence killers convicted in some way. And he took a huge risk in doing so. And Harry has sort of destroyed that relationship. But look, this statement is just in. Of course, it is via Chris Shipp of Woke ITV, who has become a propagandist. And I just want to go through it with you because, reminder, Harry and every single celebrity lost on every count. There were over 90 counts in this case. And Justice Nick Lynn decided against Harry and the plaintiffs in every single one of them. This is Harry's statement. We came to court seeking justice and accountability, but we have received neither. This judgment represents a complete reversal of the position which previous judges have taken in relation to the hacking claims successfully brought against both News Group newspapers and Mirror Group newspapers, who were represented by, at the time, the judge who made this decision. So see there, he's already suggesting there's a conspiracy. He's questioning the judge's motives. It's astonishing. Generic findings about various private investigators that were held by the courts in these parallel claims to have carried out unlawful activity at the very same time in relation to similar stories and well-known individuals have been wholly ignored. The fact that this court has chosen to dismiss them represents an inconsistency which is hard to understand or reconcile with common sense or the evidence heard in the courtroom itself. It is a complete and utter whitewash but sadly not altogether unexpected. However, the lengths to which the court has gone to exonerate the Mail is as shocking as it is totally unwarranted. When the court says there is not sufficient evidence of wrongdoing despite the document showing otherwise, then one does wonder how justice was ever going to be achieved. One need not look past when a private investigator for the Mail actually admitted on tape to having unlawfully blagged Baroness Lawrence, or when a journalist recorded the name of the private investigator she used to find out about highly sensitive medical information that even the Mail was too worried to publish, or when another investigator emailed one of the journalists with the actual British Airways seat number and ticketing details for a young girl simply visiting her boyfriend in return for payment. It feels here like one rule for the newspapers and another for the claimants. While the claimants presented evidence, Mail journalists simply gave denials, and the court chose uncritically to believe them, even in the face of inconsistencies, contradictions, and blatant untruths that were obvious to neutral observers in court when compared to the documents. We presented to the court evidence which we believe was compelling at the time and remains so now. We would like to thank our legal team for all their hard work and all the witnesses who were brave enough to come forward in the pursuit of justice. So effectively, what Harry is saying there is this is a conspiracy. And of course, that's completely nuts. Like, we're talking about one of the most privileged men in the world. There is no conspiracy against you, Prince Harry. And let me just remind you, there have been findings against newspapers that did break the law. And so there should be. I am disgusted by what the Daily Mirror did. I am disgusted by what News Group newspapers did. But you're looking to bring down the Daily Mail when there was never the evidence. Now, before I get you to weigh in, I do want to bring you, we have on video now, Paul Dacre, who is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Mail. He's a formidable man. And remember, he was editing the Daily Mail back in the 90s when guess who was one of his best contacts? Princess Diana, Harry's mother. So Harry always says, oh, he's doing this for his mother. No, Diana liked the Daily Mail. She disliked a lot of other newspapers. She liked the Daily Mail. You'll remember there were even rumours that she was romancing Richard Kay, who was the royal correspondent for the Daily Mail. At the very least, they were very good friends. And so Paul Dacre, this is pretty unprecedented because he tends to be like the bloke behind the scenes, but he has now just released a video statement directly addressing Prince Harry.
4 years ago, lawyers for Prince Harry, Doreen Lawrence and Elton John accused the Mail, in a blaze of publicity, of placing bugs in homes, cars, cafes and landline phones. We described those charges, some related to stories that were over 30 years old, as lurid and preposterous. Today, in what was a momentous victory for the Mail, the High Court dismissed every single one of the 97 claims. That is an overwhelming vindication of our journalism. The Mail's famous front page, naming 5 thugs as Stephen Lawrence's murderers, could have seen me jailed for contempt of court. Instead, it triggered the Macpherson inquiry and the eventual jailing of 2 of the killers. Stephen's father, Neville, says he owes the Mail everything. Why Baroness Lawrence, for whom we have always had profound respect and sympathy, chose to turn on both the paper and the brilliant reporter who campaigned for justice for her son for over 2 decades, is something I will never be able to comprehend. Prince Harry wrote a sad book which boasted about his killing of 25 Taliban, his drug taking, and, in cringe-making detail, how he lost his virginity. There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family. For him to complain about his privacy being invaded takes not just the biscuit, but the whole tin. Poor Harry. I feel sorry for the way a confused and angry young man has been drawn into this case. The bitter irony is that his mother, Diana, liked the Mail. We were her paper. We took her side in her acrimonious breakup with Charles. She and I would speak and meet. The Mail's superb royal reporter was her friend and confidant. The truth is that this trumped-up action, which has cost well over £50 million and wasted a huge amount of valuable court time, should never have been brought to trial. That it did raises profoundly disturbing questions about the conduct of elements of the legal profession. Today's verdict is not just a victory for Associated's magnificent journalists, several of whom have had a terrible toll imposed on their health and lives, but a free press generally. Make no mistake, this was a conspiracy supported by Hacktoff to destroy a paper, financed by the orgy-loving racist Max Mosley and involving the actor Hugh Grant. It was also a sinister bid to resuscitate Leveson 2 and impose statutory regulation on the press, which, even now, is rearing its ugly head in Labour's media green paper. Some of the allegations made by Harry's lawyers against the Mail involved Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. They were rejected by the court. But remember, It was the power of the Mail's journalism that not once, but twice, resulted in Mandelson being sacked as a minister. And it was the Mail on Sunday's exclusive picture of Prince Andrew with his arm around 17-year-old Virginia Giuffre in Ghislaine Maxwell's home that ultimately resulted in justice for Epstein's underage victims. Such justice only happened, as with Stephen Lawrence, because of the actions of a free press.
Wow. Wow. I actually wanted to stay with all of that statement because it is so rare, Christine, to hear from Paul Dacre in that manner. And if you just take a look at that picture again, look at the front pages that are behind him. So it's that famous front page on our left where he put the pictures of the 5 white men accused of killing Stephen Lawrence under the headline murderers. He could have gone to prison. And then look to the far right there, and it's the Mail's coverage of Diana's death. I thought it was a very powerful statement, Christine.
I thought it was astonishing. I mean, I was listening almost open-mouthed. One thing he said that, and you're right, people should not underestimate the bravery that Dacre and the Mail exhibited by publishing that front page. You know, they were confident, but he could have gone. He could have gone to prison for, well, Neil will tell you he's the lawyer for whatever it was. But they didn't. He went along with it bravely. But he said, and I think I've understood him correctly, that in layman's terms, that Harry was basically, because he's stupid, led by the nose by lawyers. He should have been told by lawyers. I mean, 97 counts were thrown out, not one. Now, how could the lawyers have thought that he had any case at all? I mean, one would have to see the transcripts and goodness knows what, but every single one was thrown out. So who on earth was advising Harry, and what was their motive, I wonder?
Absolutely. And he is nominated by Neil as today's Union Jackass, the worst Briton in the world today. Let's see if he's won. But
that was my nomination.
Oh, was it
You
yours?
put it the wrong way round. That's my nomination.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Christine.
Matter.
Okay, no, it does matter because your husband and wife, you don't always think the same. Okay, so I'll get to the nominations in one moment. Just before we get there, though, I have to say, goodness me, the breaking news is coming thick and fast today, but we do have an update, okay, on this by-election. So now the Conservatives and the Labour Party, as well as Restore Britain, all saying that they will not stand in the by-election. Neither will the Liberal Democrats. So I think Neil, Christine and I are looking right. You know, this is turning into quite a farce.
Up yours, Nigel.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's get to our feedback from you on this. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Mr. Lard YT, who says Jacob Rees-Mogg's comments are damage control. He is aligned with reform, and he says there's fraud and corruption going on here. Brian Hewson says Tommy Robinson has had the British deep state doing this to his family for years. Happy to help. S6Z, or Z, I should say, sorry. It sounds like an exit strategy for Farage. Reform is another establishment-controlled party. Restore. Mark Travels, 140, says Farage is purely doing this as a stunt to keep his face in the media. He needs parliamentary investigation to end over this £5 million investigation. But Johnny Favourite says Farage is England's only hope. The rest work for the deep state or the Tories. 012 Duai says we need a real man to take charge of the country who isn't scared to say what they think. The only real man is Rupert Lowe. I don't care what anyone says anymore. But GCP says they should leave Nigel's daughter alone if she's not in the public eye. I'm sure as a woman, it must have been scary for her. Not sure about Nigel, but I respect him for this stance. And MD34338 says what so many of us on the right hoped would be the case before Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef rewarded him to the police. Farage and Lowe together would be amazing. They would be formidable. Okay, so a huge amount of comments coming in on the breaking news of the day. But a reminder of the Union Jackass nominations. I'm sorry, it was Christine Hamilton who nominated Prince Harry for losing that verdict today.
It does,
because one of us is going to win, Christine, so it does matter.
When Neil put forward Jordan Henderson, I had to say, who's he?
So this is the England football player, and he sort of broke his arm, didn't he, falling across the sign. It was like in a celebration. And I went for Beth Rigby, not really necessarily fairly in this case, but sort of because she's the face of Sly News. And I couldn't nominate Sly News, so I sort of thought, well, I'll go for our Beth, because you know she's the face of Sly. Anyway, I'm sorry, Neil, you're the big loser today. Just 4% of the outspoken audience going for.
They don't know who he is
Jordan
either.
Henderson.
It's the first time I've lost.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. And I am the runner-up with Beth Rigby and 38% of the vote. But the overwhelming winner today, the worst Briton in the world today after this historic courtroom loss, it is Prince Harry. So Christine Hamilton, you get the win. Who wants to reveal who you've gone for as our greatest Briton today?
Christine.
Oh, crumbs, yes. Who have we gone for?
Katie Lamb, there she
yeah,
is.
Katie Lamb, sorry, that's right. Katie Lamb, because I think it was
It was
yesterday.
her idea.
Yeah, no, this was my idea. But it was only yesterday, because it's Tuesday, so it must have been yesterday. She made a brilliant speech in the House of Commons advocating that this ghastly man, whose name I won't even mention, let's just call him the Rochdale rapist, should be deported. We've been putting him up at His Majesty's pleasure at enormous expense for God knows how long. He's out of prison now, which is an appalling thing to have happened in the first place, and he should be chucked out of the country. And she was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant in the House of Commons. So that's why.
This video is for news reporting, commentary, and educational purposes. The views expressed are based on publicly available information and personal analysis. We strive for accuracy but encourage viewers to verify information through official sources.